Wow.
Well, I haven't really thought about it, but
But you've lived it, so
right, yeah. So I guess where I would start is going through hospice with my mother,
okay.
and that was in 1994. I spent the last 2 weeks with her, her last 2 weeks, and I found it very interesting. I wasn't into any of this stuff at that point. I was still working, teaching exercise classes. Um, but I had some very interesting experiences during that 2 weeks with my mother. She was in a hospital bed in the middle of the living room, and I was sleeping on the couch next to her. And I'd like to tell you some stories about some things that happened in those 2 weeks first.
Yeah.
Um, one day she woke up and she was crying, and I said, Mom, what's wrong? And she said, well, I was with these three angels, and they were getting me ready to go somewhere. They dressed me in a white dress, and they brushed my hair, and they put flowers in my hair,
Wow.
but then they left and they didn't take me.
Oh,
And I'm so sad. I wanted to go with them. And she described each one. One was a blonde, one was a brunette, one was a redhead. They had wings that went way above their heads and all the way down to the ground. And they were all dressed in white, and they were barefoot, and so was she. And so I had no idea what that meant. So the only thing I could think of to say was, well, I guess it wasn't, the time wasn't right yet. So, because she knew she was in her last
yeah.
days. She had called my sister in Massachusetts and I, and said, you need to come. So, so then another time she woke up and she said, oh, I had the most wonderful time. I got to meet JFK. And I'm like, oh, wow. She loved him. And she said, he's such a nice person. And he was so friendly. And I'm like, of course, I used to be quite the comedian. Of course, I said, was half of his head gone? And
Wow.
she said, no, he was perfect. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's nice, Mom. And then another day, this is getting closer and closer to her transition, and she woke up and she's looking in front of her bed on the side. She's looking back and forth, and I said, "What's wrong, Mom? What are you looking for?" And she said, "There were four red velvet chairs there. Where did they go? What happened to them?" And I said, I don't know, Mom. We don't have any red chairs. And I said, were people sitting in them? I thought it was another dream, so I'm asking. And she said, yeah, it was you and Marilyn and Sue, my two sisters, and Dad. I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, I don't know. I guess it was just a dream. So she kind of accepted that. So then a couple of days later, she started really going through a transition. She was sleeping a lot. She wasn't eating anymore. Um, and the hospice people were wonderful. They were so sweet and so caring. And I asked one of them, so what are we to expect? And it was the weekend, and so that she said we won't be coming over the weekend, but if 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 her breathing changes and anything else changes, you can call me and I'll come. I'm 20 minutes away. So that was Saturday. And Sunday morning, we moved her out onto the sun porch because she was a big plant person, and all her
Doctor.
living room, I don't know, people walking. So we moved her out onto the sun porch, and that morning she didn't wake up. She was very sleepy. She wasn't responding, and her breathing had changed, and it was very shallow, and you could almost hear that what they call the death rattle. And so I called the nurse, and I called my sister lived next door, and I called her, and my other sister was there too. And I said, "You guys, I think you need to come in." And so we were all sitting around her, holding her hands and brushing her head. And the nurse said, "I'll be there as soon as I can." Within minutes, she took a couple breaths and stopped breathing. But then all of a sudden there was another breath, and then she would stop breathing, and then there was a gasp, and then there was nothing. And so when the nurse got there, we said, we think she's gone. And so she checked it out, and she said, yes, she is. And so she called the people to come and get her, the funeral home. And so we went outside while she cleaned her up and got her ready to go. So my two sisters and I opened a bottle of wine and made a toast.
Yeah.
And then she was gone. So fast forward to 2000 when I retired, I thought, I want to do that. I want to be a hospice volunteer. They're so sweet and they're so good to people, and I want to do something meaningful with the rest of my life. I want to do that. I want to do that to give back for her. And so I joined the hospice. I took the Reiki classes. I did the training that we did, like 20 hours of training, which I would suggest people take because that was so informative. I learned a lot. We wrote our own obituaries. One of the exercises I have to talk about because it was very meaningful to me, so that you would understand what people that are going through their transition, what they're going through in their mind. So we had 4 pieces of paper, and we were to write down 4 things that would be the last things that we would have to give up in our life. And so then she came around with the wastebasket and said, okay, throw one of them away. So we had to pick one of them and throw it away. And the first one I threw away was my friends. And then she came around and said, okay, now you have to throw away another one. And the next one I threw away was my family. And then she came around again and said, okay, one more. And that was a hard choice because it was surrendering or giving up my faith. And that was really, really hard. But it made me understand what people go through, because when you're coming to the end, you're coming to the end of your life. And so then, and that was a really interesting experiment, I thought. That really gave me a lot more insight into what people go through at the end of their life.
Yeah.
And so I started doing the Reiki. It was so funny because I was a Reiki volunteer. You can just do respite if you want, where you just sit with people, read to them, whatever. One lady wanted me to do the rosary with her. Well, I'm not Catholic, so I had to learn the rosary. Another person just wanted me to read them poetry, and some just wanted to talk. Some just wanted your presence, just to be there. And I found that people loved touch at the end of their life, just to hold their hand,
Mhm.
or stroke their hair, or anything. Just I like to do foot rubs, and people love that.
Yeah.
Just that touch. And so I started doing, and I got to tell you, my first experience was really weird. And my volunteer coordinator came with me, and because it was my first visit. And so we go to this house. It was an elderly man, and his caregiver was his daughter. And we knocked on the door, and the daughter comes to the door, and she's in her underwear. I'm like, oh, hello. We're with Visiting Nurses Hospice Program. And I felt really uncomfortable. And another thing they told us was, when you go, look around the room and see what their interests were. Something that you can talk to them about, something that you can relate to with them. So, and that was an interesting piece of information also.
Yeah.
So, I went in and I did Reiki on the dad. She went and got dressed. And so that was my first experience. And because they knew that I had been in a 12-step program for many years, the coordinator, she was wonderful. She would visit each person that was in hospice. She would visit them and get a sense of what they were about, and then she would try to match them with one of the volunteers, which I thought was wonderful. And so they would always give me people that had alcohol or drug issues, things like that. So that was very interesting too. And then I started, the more I did the Reiki, the more spiritual I got. And my friend Martha, Sally knows her. Well, you might know her too. She was ordained with me. We went through the different levels together, and we joined together. So she asked me to start going to these message circles with her with this medium, and that just accelerated my spirituality. And then we ended up joining Sally's women's circle. And that even furthered my spirituality. And we have many, many wonderful memories driving down to Sally's and doing the women's circle. So anyway, so the more I got used to doing the hospice visits, the more comfortable I got doing it. And I remember the two women that were with my mom, they even came to her funeral. And I thought that was really nice. They told us in training, you don't have to do that, but if you feel like it, go ahead. So I did start. If I was with them for a long time and I had formed a relationship with them and their family, then I might do that. But otherwise, I don't normally. So that was in 2020. So this is my 25th year
Wow.
of doing hospice. Yeah. And I've learned a lot over the years. I've learned that someone always comes to greet you and help you cross over. I know that because of a few examples. I've seen people reach a hand up to the ceiling. They're staring up at the ceiling and they reach their hand up like someone's reaching down for them. I've seen people call out a name. One woman tried to get off of the bed because she wanted to go. And another interesting experience that I had was they there was they called me one day and said, "Can you go to Manchester Hospital, which is in the town where I live? There's a woman there that's very close to transitioning, and her husband really needs a break. So could you go and sit with her?" And so I did, and never met the woman before. I may have told this story before on here, but I'll tell it again anyway. Never met her before. For some reason, her bed was very raised up so that we were like eye level. The back of her bed was up a little bit, and we were like eye level. And when I got there, I introduced myself to her husband and her. She was still awake, but she was very weak, and she was whispering. And he said to me, "She wants to go home." And then he left, and I knew that she didn't mean her physical home. She meant she wanted to go home. And so I asked her about that, and she would shake her head or she'd whisper an answer. But the whole time I'm talking to her, she's looking over here to my left. Now I know that this is my feminine side, and the right side is my male side. So I'm thinking she sees a mother or a sister or somebody that's coming for her. That's what I thought. So I finally said to her, "Do you see someone over here?" She nodded her head, and I said, "Do you know who it is? Can you tell me?" And she whispered, "It's your mother."
Wow.
I was like, "My mother?" And she said, "She's beautiful."
Wow.
And I was like, "Wow." Because, because I'm doing it for my mom. And,
Yeah.
and medium friends in the past had told me that whenever I do Reiki, my mother's with me.
Mhm.
And so that was like such a confirmation for me.
Wow.
That was wonderful. I mean, I walked out of there feeling sad and feeling happy. And like that was such a confirmation. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
But it was also sad too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a lot of really interesting experiences. One woman told me that she thought that her husband had passed before her, and she thought that her husband was pulling her down into hell. She kept dreaming that she was at the top of the stairs, he was at the bottom of the stairs, and they had a sheet that they were hanging onto, and he was pulling her down the stairs.
Wow.
And I thought, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's what's happening. He may be coming for you, but he's not going to bring you to hell, because personally, I don't believe that there is a hell. I think we all go to the same place. We go to the other side,
Yeah.
and when we get there, we are free. We have free will. I've been told this by a lot of mediums. I've taken a lot of classes and a lot of mediumship classes, and I had a mentor named Joy Silicate, and she was just wonderful. She was a certified medium. She'd been tested, and she was really good. In fact, funny story, she was teaching some classes at the local community college entitled Life After Life and things like that. And I took all her classes. And it was shortly after my mom had passed, and she she said she goes around at the end of the class and gives everyone a message. And so when we had cleaned out my mom's house and her closet and everything, I had taken this one sweater that was her favorite sweater, but I always thought it was really ugly. It had reindeer on it, and it had a zipper up the front. It was like a Swiss type,
Yeah.
Switzerland or something like that. And but I took it anyway because I knew it was her favorite. And I kept it in my closet. And a lot of times when I'd come home at night, I'd put it on just like to get a hug from her. And it still smelled like her too. So but I never wore it out anywhere because I just thought people would laugh at me. So she's behind me and she's saying, um, I've got your mom here, and she has a strange message for you. And I'm just sitting there like, well, what is she gonna tell me? And she said, she's saying, you can wear that out in public. No one will laugh at you. I, whoa. Oh my goodness sake. It's like, I'm a believer now.
Yeah.
If I never was before, I am now. So yeah, that was really funny.
That is funny.
She used to give me a lot of messages. And after my dad passed, 4 years after my mother, she gave me a message from him one time that blew my mind. So I totally believe in people who speak to the other side. But
Yeah.
anyway, so getting back to the hospice work, another minister of ours, Helena Trey, she took a class above Reiki. I think it was healing touch. I think it is. It's like a year of training, and then you're like you work with a master for a while, and you work with a nurse, and she taught me that chakra spread that I taught Sally when her mom was in hospice, and it's just the seven chakras. You spread them with your hands. So like I would just do that. And you start at the head and you go down the seven chakras and you spread each one three times. And then you go down the leg, each leg three times. And then you repeat that whole sequence three times. And normally it works within 24 to 48 hours, sometimes sooner. Um, One woman that I worked on in Manchester Hospital, nobody was there. No one was with her, and she was in her last moments when I was called there. And I was doing that spread, and when I got to her feet, she stopped breathing.
Oh,
And I was that was the first time anyone had passed when I was alone with them. And so I went out and got a nurse because we were told to do that because somebody has to pronounce them, a nurse or a doctor. And so I went out and got a nurse, and she came in and she said, yes, she's gone. And I said, well, please tell her family that I was with her and that it was very, very peaceful. And she just slipped away very peacefully while I was with her. And I just felt that that was important for them to know that she wasn't by herself.
yeah.
Um, and another time at the same hospital, this woman, I had done the spread on her, and then I had gone to another room to do another Reiki, and her family had left to go to the funeral to make arrangements, and she passed. And the nurse came and told me, she just passed, but her family has left. And she said, I just thought you might want to know. So when I finished with that patient, I went back in that room and I sat there with her until her family came back because I thought, if this was my mother, I wouldn't want her to be just in this room alone. She's already gone, but just the fact that she's alone. So I sat there and I waited until her family came back, and they really appreciated it. That was really very heartwarming for them. But things like that. I This one woman, she was always talking about carved wooden bears that she had bought one up at the Cape. Her and her husband used to go there on their anniversary every year, and she bought this carved bear. And I've actually seen that place. It's in Chatham, Massachusetts. The guy's got them all in his front yard, and they're all carved wooden bears, different sizes. And so we have a friend, and Sally knows him, Ken. He's a very spiritual guy, and he loves Native American. He channels a Native American chief, and he's a wood carver. And so I called him and I said, you wouldn't happen to have a carved wooden bear, would you? And he said, well, let me check my inventory and I'll let you know. And he did. He had a small one. It was maybe 6 inches tall. And I said, I have a hospice patient that has always loved carved wooden bears. Would you mind? Could I buy that from you? And he goes, oh, take it. So the next time I went to visit her, I took it. And I gave it to her, and oh my God, she cried. She set it right on a shelf, right where she could see it from her hospital bed. And I did go to her funeral because her son had gone to school with my daughter, so there was a connection there. I'd never met her before until she was in hospice, but I knew her son. So I went to the funeral, and it was an open casket, and that wooden bear was in the casket. That was so touching, you know.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I keep doing it, and I'll do it until I can't walk anymore. Because it's experiences like that are just so heartwarming, and just fills me with love, And I can't even express the words how that makes me feel. That woman that thought her husband was pulling her down into hell, I gave her a stone for protection, and that was in her casket with her, in her hand. It was in her hand, and I
Wow.
didn't know that. And her husband came up to me and he said, "Take a look at what's in her hand." And it was that stone that I gave her. So, you never know how you're going to touch someone. The
True.
simplest little thing, giving her a stone, um, meant a lot to her and to her family. And recently, last year, another one of the hospice volunteers, she got cancer and she was in hospice. And she was also a friend of Alice Moore's. And she asked for me as her volunteer because she knew that I would do that spread for her. And I was there 3 or 4 times, and her family, she was with her daughter, but then her son and his wife came because she was nearing the end. And a couple of days before she passed, I had been there, and I told her family, if she takes a turn for the worse and it looks like she's ready to transition, please call me because I can help. And so they did. A couple of days later, they called me, and so I went over. And when I walked into her room, her son was in the room and her daughter was in the room. And when I walked in the room, she had this terrified look on her face. And as soon as she saw me, she totally relaxed because she knew I was going to do that spread. And she just really wanted to go. And so I did the spread, and the son and daughter stayed in the room. And but they, of course, they were weepy the whole time. And I did go to her funeral because I had become friends with her. And her son was the first one in line. And when I walked up to him, he gave me the biggest, hardest hug. And he said, "That was such a beautiful thing that you did for my mother. You truly are an angel." And it just, it just makes me feel so good. And that's why I keep doing it. A lot of my friends say, "I don't know how you do that. Doesn't it make you sad?" And I'm like, no, it really doesn't, because I feel like I helped out of their pain and suffering
Yeah.
and into another world, you know. And I wanted to say, have you ever seen that movie, The Shack, or read the book? I love that movie. It's about a father who loses a child, and they're on a camping trip, and she disappears. And he is in his grief so deep. And I won't tell you the whole thing, but it's winter, and there's oh, and they found the little girl's body in a shack in the woods. That's why it's called the shack. And it was winter, and there was snow on the ground. And he walked out to his mailbox, and there were no footprints anywhere, but there was a letter in the mailbox, and it was telling him he needed to go back to the shack, and assuming it was a letter from God. And so he made that trip, and that whole trip is the most beautiful experience, and it helped him through his grief. I would say that, if you know somebody that's really grieving, have them watch that movie because it's really inspirational. Sally, you've seen it?
I read the book too.
I did too. I read the book first, and then I've watched that movie 3 or 4 times. I love that movie. And the thing I love the most about it is when he gets to the shack, he meets God and Jesus, and I guess it's Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary. I'm not sure which, but God is a black woman. I thought that was very interesting. But anyway, Jesus teaches him some lessons, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful movie. So anyway, um, I don't know, I guess I can't really think, well, I could tell you many stories, but um, that's why I do it. And I know for a fact, and I tell people this, I tell the families even, someone always comes for you. You never cross over alone, ever. And I also go to NDE meetings, near death experience.
Mhm.
And boy, I've heard some stories there that would blow your mind about people's going over to the other side and coming back and what they experienced.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. Their stories are all different, but there's a common thread. And that is that when you get there, you feel this overwhelming sense of unconditional love. That's the common thread. And so when I was younger, I used to be terrified that I would die alone. And so I gave that up a long time ago because I'm absolutely positive that I will not be alone. I would expect that it would be my mother or maybe Alice. I don't know. Could be a friend, could even be an animal, a pet. But I know you're not alone. So that was a big relief for me to realize that and to hear that and to see it actually, to actually experience that happening. So so many confirmations, and so I just have such a different outlook from 30 years ago when I was an athlete and an exercise instructor
Yeah.
and loved to go dancing and partying. Now I'm just like totally different person. But I love the travel that I've had and the experiences that I've had. I'll never forget. I write a lot of them down in a journal,
Okay.
the ones that are memorable,
Yeah.
you know. And people say, well, why don't you write a book? But yeah, I don't know. Um, I like to go back and read them sometimes just for my own
Yeah.
curiosity, and I'll go back and because some of them I forget. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you for that.
I remember when my mother was getting ready to transition. Laura, you taught me how to do the chakra spread. And when I got there, she was in an assisted living place, and they had initiated hospice. She was very close to the end. Um, and she was real agitated. And I did the spread on her. I mean, she wouldn't even let me hold her hand. I don't know if it was in pain, if she was in pain or what, but um, she I did the spread on her, and she calmed right down. She calmed right down, and yeah, within 24 hours she had transitioned. But it was remarkable how much it settled her, and I could I could kind of feel the chakras opening. I could feel them opening. I could feel, especially the crown. I could feel it opening up and getting ready, like opening a door for her is what it felt like for me, and I was glad I was able to do that. My brother says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well," and I explained it to him. He says, "Good idea." So
You can
he's
do
spiritual in his own way, you know.
Yeah.
it. You
And
do
when my dad was getting ready to pass, my mom and I were there. Um, I don't think either one of us really knew that he was going to leave quite so soon, but he was lying there, and I was holding his hand, and one of the only times I ever remember him telling me he loved me was then, and we talked a little bit, and then he sort of went to sleep, and I could hear that death rattle. I wasn't quite sure what that was at that point, but then we stayed for a while, and then we left because mom was falling asleep in the chair, and so I got the call in the middle of the night, and the lady who called said that she was with him. She heard him. I guess she was right down the hall, and she was like one of the night hospice nurses. And she came into the room, and so she sat there and held his hand while he passed. So he wasn't alone. And she said he went peacefully. you know, it was, it, you
Another
know,
really, go
it,
ahead.
it, it's interesting. Once the soul leaves, once the spirit makes the transition out of the body, what's left looks different,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
yeah,
The husk, the mortal body looks really different. And it's like that really amazed me in both my parents when they went, 1 minute they're there, the next minute, wow, they're gone, they're gone. And then a while later, I think it was a year or so, about a year or so later, uh, Paula, you guys know Paula and Jean Mandeville and I were at the spiritualist camp down there in Connecticut. And Jean was giving a talk, and at the end of it, she started giving readings. And I was the first one. I mean, it was just like she was walking around the room and she called me and I said, "What does she want to say to me?" Because I had no idea. It was a message from my mother. She said she now understands. My mom and I never got along. And she says she now understands, and she said a lot of other positive things about what she now knows about me, and that was a real affirmation that, yeah, okay, she is over there. She's on the other side. She's okay. And she's going to school and she was learning things.
wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you about it sometime. I won't go into all the details, but it was
Well,
very affirming for me,
Yeah.
that finally she gets it. Um, anyway,
and another story that I'll never forget, and again, Joyce Orchid, she's passed now too, but
yeah.
I got called to a nursing home in town by one of the nurses, and she said, could you come over here and sit with this man for a couple of hours because I really need to go, and he has no family, no one, and he's very close, but I just hate to leave him alone here. And so I said, of course, and I went, and when I got there, she said his name is Bill Kidd. That's his last name, Kidd, and they call him Billy the Kid. But she said he's very close, and he loves the song Amazing Grace. So I sang it for him. The nurse told me that. And so she said, it probably won't be long. So, and she left. So I sat down, and even though he wasn't conscious, but he was still breathing. So, and I know that the last thing to go is your hearing, and they hear everything you say, because if you get messages from people who do readings, they'll tell you, I heard everything you said at the end. So I know that's true. So I introduced myself, and I held his hand, and I looked around the room to see if anybody was around. Nobody was out in the hall. I sang Amazing Grace. I sang it through once, then I hummed it, the whole thing again. And by the time I finished, he had stopped breathing. And that night, around 9 o'clock, I get a call from Joyce Orca. She lives in Coventry, another town. And she said, Laura, I have to tell you, this man wants to give you a message, and he won't let me go to sleep until I give you this message. So he said he's a tall, thin man, and his name is Billy, and he wants to say thank you. I was like, oh my God, wow,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, gives me chills every time I tell these stories. And that's another thing that mediums will tell you. When you get chills when you tell those stories, it means it's the truth.
Yeah.
I've heard that before too. Uh, yeah, so many beautiful stories.
Yeah.
And that's do it.
Laura, I've really enjoyed all your stories. Uh, from what we learned in funeral college, uh, you're doing exactly what is supposed it should be done. Uh, you're you're relating with the patient and whatever, and dealing we were talking earlier about dealing with a chronic illness brings a whole different set of rules, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And you were doing every one of them. You mentioned about them reaching up just before they pass over. I had an aunt that did that. Well, that aunt came through to me a couple of years later in a reading. And I said, did we interpret that right? Were you reaching up for loved ones? And she answered yes. So that is, and you hear that a lot with mediums when they come through, they tell you that. Uh, and the story of the woman being dragged into hell horrifies me.
Yeah.
And what horrifies me is that structured religion has brought that into her head. You talk to people who have similar experiences during an NDE, and the ones who come back and they visited the gates of hell and demons all around them and whatever have probably a very unhealthy religious influence in their life.
Well,
You
Hollywood's to
know,
blame too. I
yeah,
agree. I
Oh,
agree.
yeah.
and your work is just phenomenal, and you should publish that journal as a book. And that's all you've already written it. Hand it over to the editors and say, go at it. And because we talked about doing a series for potential ministers and whatever.
Yeah.
This program, I feel, should be part of that series on hospice care and the need for hospice care.
Yeah.
Because your ministry is so powerful. It and you know, I often heard it explained that death is like going on a cruise ship. All your loved ones stand waving on the dock and they have mixed feelings. You're going on the holiday of your life, but they're going to miss you while you're gone. You're helping them to pack. You know, and I hate for it to sound so simple, but I mean it is. You're helping them build their spiritual suitcase to cross over.
Mm.
And that work is incredible.
It takes the fear away from a lot of people when
Yeah.
I those
Mm.
stories.
And
And
we're never alone.
no.
I heard a medium last week, and his comment was the birth angels that brought us into the earth and have been with us all of our lives are the same ones that are with us when we
Mhm.
return to the
I
world.
believe that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They get assigned to us when we're born.
that angel has been there since day one, and he'll be there on the last day.
Mhm.
And so we're never alone.
And how we found out the name of our guardian angel was in a class with Joyce Orcutt. She took us through a little meditation, and then she said we had a notebook in front of us, and she said, "Now I want you to think about that and see if you can close your eyes and try to picture what your guardian angel might look like, and then write down the first name that comes into your mind, and that's who your angel is." Mine is Gabrielle. That was the first name that came to mind. But there's a book that's really interesting. It's a true story, written by the sister of a woman who passed. It's the Afterlife of Billy Fingers. It's a little tiny paperback, but it's very interesting because her brother is an alcoholic and she was always trying to save him. And finally, she just gave up and he moved to Florida and he was homeless and blah, blah, blah. And then she got notification that he had passed. And he started coming to her in dreams. And at first, she thought they were just dreams. But then he started telling her what her friends were doing and things that she was doing in the present moment. And then she knew that it really was him. And he asked her to write a book about his experiences in his journey on the other side. And he did say, because he had had such a tumultuous life, that he had many levels that he went through until he finally reached the promised land, whatever you want to think about it as. And that was very interesting because shortly after I read that book, my father was an alcoholic, and he was not a very nice person in the end because he got alcohol dementia. And it was horrible, and I won't go into that. But after he passed, a couple of months later, I was in a message circle with Joyce Orcutt. And before she started the circle, she said, I have a guy here that needs to give a message before I can start the circle. And he's of short status, and he died from something in the chest, probably heart. And he has a very short name. Well, my dad's name was Irv, and everybody called him Bud. He was known as Bud. And so I thought, uh-oh, I think that might be my dad. And she said, well, he's having trouble moving on from where he is, and he needs your help. And so she said, I'll leave you with that. So afterwards, I went up to her and I said, how can I help? And she said, put a picture of him out somewhere where you see it every day. And every time you pass it, smile and say, I love you. And I did that. And about maybe 6 months later, I was down in Niantic at the spiritualist camp. And there was, do you know Susan Francie, Sally?
Vaguely.
She's
Vaguely.
a minister in the spiritualist church. Well, she was married to a guy named Al, and he showed up at this message circle with his wife, and he came over to me afterwards and he said, I have a message for you from your dad. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. He said to tell you thank you. It helped. So he's moved on. So I was like, oh, cool. I love when I get confirmations like that. It just means so much. So pretty cool. I love what I do.
Yeah. Allows you to let go of all the stuff that a lot of people carry through their lives.
Yeah. He needed forgiveness to move on.
Yeah.
But he really had to forgive himself. But apparently I helped him do that.
Yeah.
And neither one of my sisters have ever gotten messages from him, but I think it's because I'm so open.
Yeah.
You know, they're not. But,
Mm.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And
Good
I
stuff.
asked Joyce one time, like, I was very close to my grandfather and my grandmother. And I asked her, I said, how come I never get any messages from them? And I said, I was very close to them when I was growing up. And she said, well, she said, you know, after people pass, you get a choice. You have free will to do whatever you want for eternity. And maybe they just decided to go do something else for eternity that makes them happy. So I now see my grandmother sitting on a dock with a bamboo fishing pole with a hook with a worm on it and a bobber, because she loved to do that. And I could see her doing that for eternity.
Yep.
So that helped me because I often wondered, how come I never hear from them,
Yep.
you know, or hear from certain people? It's because they may have decided to do something else for eternity. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
When we
Plus,
were, oh, go
oh,
ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was gonna say, plus you don't need a message. Spirit comes to us when we need a message. And
Mm.
they come to us with the message they have for us and not the one we want.
Yeah.
And if your grandparents aren't coming to you with a message, all's good.
Yeah.
And love them in your heart. And, they'll love you back. And if you don't need a message, go for it. Sally, you mentioned about your mom coming back.
Yeah.
We had a reading on here, and the woman giving the reading mentioned about my father coming through, and my father apologizing to me, and I mean, I took it to heart, whatever, but then I realized I'm left with all this resentment that has nowhere to go, because resented my father up until that point. And then all of a sudden I looked at him differently. And I was surprised with the fact that I had all this resentment that I just had to let go. I mean, why bother? So it's amazing what kind of content or what kind of emotions can be taken from us.
Mm. I know when my mother, when Jean gave me the message from my mother, she said she finally, she indicated that she was sort of going to school. She was learning things, and she said she was finally beginning to understand me and acknowledged positive things about me that she never wanted to see when she was on this side, and that she said I was a good person and a bunch of other very private things. So I knew it was from her, and but it was affirmative, and it was a relief to me that my mother finally was beginning to understand me and finally letting go of her resentment and things like that. And that changed my whole feelings about our relationship, sort of, can't
Hmm.
undo the past. It was what it was.
Right.
Um, but I can see her in a different light now. You know, I didn't particularly like her when she was alive, but I do now. I
That's me
think,
with my dad.
yeah, I think she's better now. She's learning. She's better now, and I hope that when my time comes, um, I'll have I'll have lessons too, and that I'll be able to see things even more clearly than I do now. But yeah, it was yeah, you talk about the resentment. The resentment's gone now. There's nothing there, nothing left.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also helps me. I also resented his brothers and sisters and whatever because I was never accepted in the family. So I always had that resentment. And that all dissipates too.
Yeah.
You know, it is almost spiritually liberating,
Mhm.
Mhm. Very much so.
and we don't concentrate enough on that.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
I remember when Terry, do you remember the story? Well, you must. Terry Schiavo, the woman in Florida.
Mhm.
And I watched on the news, I was quite sick at the time. And they're fighting tooth and nail, tooth and nail, tooth and nail to keep her alive. They're in court today, they're in court tomorrow. And I'm sitting in bed thinking, what a wasted opportunity. You have all these bishops screaming about keeping her alive, and there's no message about how wonderful it is to cross over and make it a teachable moment, which is what it could have been. And instead, it became,
Very selfish thing.
yeah, and not based in spirituality, but based in politics and whatever. And I looked at it and my heart ached over the fact that this was a missed opportunity. You have a nation paying attention, you have the world paying attention, and that's the time to deliver a spiritual message.
Yeah.
God has done what he can, and it's time for her to pass over. We have assisted dying here in Canada, and you wouldn't believe all the churches that are screaming against it
Hmm.
and making you jump through hoops. Uh, uh, and it's crazy because there again is a missed opportunity to spread the spiritual messages that come along with passing over.
Yeah.
One other point that I wanted to make before I forget, and I know we're almost out of time, but it's really important to tell people that, like, one of my friends was dying, and he died before his wife could get there to see him, and she carried that guilt with her that she didn't get there in time. And I told her, he probably didn't want you there. He didn't want you to see those last seconds of his life. People do that. People wait for people to show up, and some people
They
will
want to
wait
do it alone.
to leave
Yeah,
and then die. And people feel guilty that they weren't there, but you should never feel guilty about that because that's how they wanted it.
yeah.
I,
And
I,
whenever a death occurs, you are in the perfect spot
right.
of whatever that is. I mean, how many stories do you hear of a widow who sat next to her husband's bed for 3 months, went and had a cup of coffee, and came back and he had passed over? Well,
He waited until she
uh,
left.
yeah, and I've heard mediums come through with the message that they didn't want to go there. When you're dealing with a terminal illness, you keep reducing the friends. And it's
Right,
not because you don't love them, it's
right.
because you have to withdraw yourself. And so the circle gets smaller and smaller. They're
And that
not
was an
upset with
exercise that
you.
we did. Yeah,
That's the process. And we don't
exactly.
tell people that.
Right.
Oh, I've got to be there. No, you don't have to be there. The
No,
the minute the person passes over, they know exactly where your heart was,
yeah,
and that's what matters.
yeah.
And we're not sharing that
I
the way we should be. We do,
every chance I
but
get, I
we are
share.
the exception to the rule.
Yeah,
We're a death denying society. Yeah, pure and simple. And that happened when death was taken from the home to the hospital. That's when you see the change in mentality because everyone died at home.
yeah.
Little Bobby, who was 3 years old, knew that grandma had died and was familiar with the whole death process. But then when grandma got moved to the hospital, little Bobby didn't see the
Transition.
transformation So all he knows is that mommy went away and didn't come home again.
Yeah.
And unless you explain it to them, their head makes up what happened. And it's not good.
No.
Yep. There again, Hollywood and religion,
Yeah.
all
No.
man-made. We forgot to check in.
Yeah.
I think the earlier civilizations were much more in tune than
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the veil is thinning so much now, and science is really starting to prove that all of this stuff is true. I think it's undeniable, and that there are more and more people collectively stepping up and saying, okay, I get it. I'm hearing this. I believe it. Now it's time to take some action. So
And
I,
in Vermont, they have legally assisted suicide by a doctor,
yeah.
and you don't have to be a resident either.
Mm.
So if I had a debilitating disease that they told me that I had, and that I had but a couple months to live, I do believe I would do that. I wouldn't want my family to have to see me shrivel up, and you know. And I've told them that, so I hope they're ready for that, because that is what I would do. Either that, or I want to go like my dad did. He was at my sister's the night before next door, had dinner, was chatting away, telling stories, went home, went to bed, and never woke up. I hope that's how I go.
Well, I've also heard about the concept of conscious dying, where you can just decide and you get to choose, and you pass away
Yeah.
in your sleep or whatever that looks like.
Well, I keep putting that out there, so I
Yeah.
hope that's what happens.
Yeah.
I've seen that twice
Yeah.
where they just decided to die and they were dead in a matter of days,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, uh, just to finish off, I had a wonderful story about understanding death. And we had this gentleman that died. He was in his high 90s. There was nobody in the visitation. The boy with Down syndrome came into the office and just started chatting with me. And so I thought, well, I've got to understand, I'd like to understand what he knows, what he realizes. And and I said, I'm really sorry about your grandpa. And he said, oh, it was so beautiful. He got up in the morning and he always walked around the bed and kissed grandma, good morning. And he said he got up one morning and he was on his way back to his bed, and that's it, lights out. And I thought, wow, what a way to describe it, lights out, you know.
It's
Just summed it up in 2 words.
Lights out.
Yeah.
Hey, I have there's a medium here in Vernon, the town next door to me. She's really, really good. She goes around, she does shows everywhere, at the casino, at big places, big venues and stuff. But I kind of personally know her. I was wondering if I asked her if she would come on some Sunday and
Sure. Yeah.
talk.
yeah.
We love it.
She's very good. She's like the Long Island medium, and that kid, that Matt Frazier, I think his name is.
Yeah.
She's on that level. She's very good.
Wow. Is she as energetic as he is? He exhausts me.
Oh yeah, she's funny. She's a
Wow.
riot. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was thinking about asking her
Yeah.
if
I mean, if
she,
she's willing to do it for no stipend, some people
well, yeah, she may not, but she might though, because it's a spiritual group.
maybe.
Might.
And
I'm going to ask her.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah. No, we'd love to have, other people come in. Keeps it interesting to
Yeah,
see other perspectives. And Noelle has offered to come back too. She was the one that did readings for us a few months back.
just
And
that one.
she has since done a series of podcasts with what's the personality disorder?
Schizophrenia?
Yeah, schizophrenic. And it went so deep because it was just something that was instinctive in her. She didn't know she wanted to do this, but then as she was getting to know this young man named Scott, they had these beautiful conversations together, and he was coming around and she was coming around, and they were confirming each other, saying, is it me, or am I crazy? Is it, real, or, and that really came full circle into a really cool story. So I don't know if you would be interested in hearing that from her or having her do other readings, but she's willing whenever.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So we do need a topic for next week. I don't have anything particular, but one thing that Kevin was talking about made me write down the question, what about a session on forgiveness? You know, we just
Forgiveness.
went through this whole stories of release and being relieved of the possibility of feeling guilty about stuff. What about the forgiveness for the stuff that's gone down that hasn't received that apology? Is there something to that, or anybody that's very good at that particular topic?
Hmm.
Or maybe we wait for that specialist.
I like the topic.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've heard a couple of podcasts lately that make me think there's something there. There's something a little more meaty to that. Because once you are able to get to that point where you can forgive someone you absolutely loathe, there's an awakening, an opening for that.
We could explore that.
Yeah.
We could explore that.
yeah, just basically in a conversation like this,
Yeah.
uh, because I've also seen the disadvantages of non-forgiveness,
Right.
and one case was a girl I grew up with who can't forgive her mother, although her mother's passed over,
Yeah.
and her mother has come back, and she refuses to talk to her.
Hmm.
And so I told the story, not even knowing this. I told her the story. She knew my father, so I told her about him coming back. And I said, you may want to reconsider talking to your mother the next time she comes through,
I
because
have a niece and nephew that
how
don't.
healing,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
you
sad.
think
know.
it'd be a good topic for
Yeah.
next
Okay.
Yeah, I can contribute to that too, because in my 12-step books, there's a lot of stuff about forgiveness.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. Are you available next week, Sally, that you know of?
I should be.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just have a mixed
Things have
contributor
slowed down
session.
now, just all of a sudden. Labor Day
Yeah.
confidence.
Well, we're
Yeah.
happy to have you back.
I'm
Yeah, thank
missing
you.
all
Well,
the
I
I
people.
think
know.
every Sunday I'm thinking about you guys and trying to hold space for you,
Yeah.
even if I'm not there, but it's just, I got to make my
You
money when I make my money.
you can always go to the YouTube site and catch the service. It's
That's
on
true.
there. It's all
Yeah,
the
we go take
services go out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should go back to that one with the medium because I missed that one.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't put up because
Oh,
that one with the
oh, because they were
medium, she did not
good.
want it going up. So
Um,
I cut the each person's reading up and sent
Oh,
it to them.
okay.
okay.
But there is one message that came to the entire community, to the entire church from somebody that you all knew. And so that is kind of appropriate, but she didn't want us to load her readings up to YouTube.
I forgot her name.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, so then in 2 weeks, Katrina's going to do first in her series, and she's excited about teaching about the 5 points of the star, the pentacle star of magic,
She's
Magik, right?
Yeah. Yeah, with a K.
Yeah.
she's she's
Different from
amazing.
the with the
Really is.
C. Yeah.
What's that, Laura? You broke up.
She's amazing.
Yeah, no, she's excited about it too. I'm really thrilled that there's something that she really is charged to do. Because I see there's a lot of stuff in that woman, and she just has been so quiet and in the background. I want her to step up.
She's so knowledgeable.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Isn't she just? Yeah.
Yeah.
Taught me to use the pendulum to make my stomach feel better, and it works.
Awesome.
I hold my pendulum over my stomach and I ask it to heal me,
Uh-huh.
and it'll go counterclockwise by itself.
Yeah.
That's drawing all the bad stuff out, and then it will stop, and then it will start going clockwise, and
Yep.
that's put good stuff back in, and it works.
That's awesome.
You should try it on something that's hurting. It really works.
Yeah. Very
My
cool.
husband fell and broke his nose. I'll just do it to his whole body.
There you go.
Yeah, put it over his body.
Yep. All right. Thank you,
Okay,
Laura. I appreciate your stepping up like this.
no problem.
Sally, it was good to hear your inputs too. Always good. And Kevin, you
Say a
too.
prayer for my granddaughter
Missed you
because
guys.
she's not feeling well, and she's in her 5th month of pregnancy, and I'm
Oh,
praying that
oh,
everything will be okay.
yeah. Well, maybe she's taking on something that the baby
I hope not. But
needs her to clear. Um,
please say a prayer for her. Her name is Alexa.
okay. Yes,
My
for
first
sure.
great grandbaby, Sally.
Wow.
A great grandbaby. Yeah, coming in January.
I got a second grandchild coming February 2nd.
Oh,
Yep,
very
my
close.
son Kip and Kayla are breeding again.
Cool.
So,
That's
so
Groundhog
Livy will
Day.
have
Yeah.
a sibling.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Well,
Awesome.
everyone, be
Thank
well,
you.
blessed.
Love
Bye-bye.
hugs.
Okay.
Take care.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.